usual, after the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for Dick French, who passed in the last couple of days. Dick was a regular attender of our commission meetings and a fine human being and a World War II veteran. So, Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Wanda, we are very proud to have you with us here today. Roll call.
Commissioner Pete?
Here.
Commissioner Chapman?
Here.
Chair McIntyre?
Here. And request for modifications and or approval of the agenda.
We do have two we'd like to ask for. We'd like to ask your indulgence to postpone item 1B, approval of minutes. As you know, Trish has been out sick and she did not get those finished for today. And then we'd like to add as item 5E a budget resolution adopting the 2016 Clallam County Budget Emergency Appropriations. This was a document that we started using in 2012, and in the comings and goings between Debbie and Trish, we missed putting it in the packet. So we'd like to add that as item 5E.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Yeah, move to approve the agenda as modified.
Second.
Or move, second.
Moved and seconded,
Yep, whatever.
I think. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment for agenda items. Ken.
Good morning.
What?
Kenneth Fernando, 181 West Live Road, Port Angeles, Washington. I'm here to comment again on the budget. It's the last chance. Be obvious that by design, some of the commissioners have been on a spending spree this year, and commented on that previously. I won't go backwards. But I would say I don't see anybody here from the EDC. I don't hear any advocates particularly loud about the continued money that's in the budget for next year for the shooting range proposal. I'd ask those to be removed, the increased spending for EDC, and take it back to the level it was prior to this year. I don't see it necessary to dissolve our contribution, but I'd ask for those two things in public here. And the commissioners decided to walk away from a loan obligation this year. They've made significant changes to sales tax and other items that contribute to reduction in revenue. So that's what's on my mind right now. And Dick French also, who was my neighbor and played with his sons. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Anyone else? Consent agenda.
Thank you. Item 1A is approval of vouchers for the week of November 30th. Item 1B has been postponed. Item 1C is approval of budget modifications for the week of November 23rd. And item 1D is approval of taxing district budgets.
Move adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Reports and presentations. Commissioner Chapman.
So two things. For those who don't know, Dick was a long time attender. In my 15 years in office, he attended more commissioner meetings than anybody by far. In fact, we have attended more commissioner meetings for a 12-year period than some commissioners did. Dick was fair. He would point out to the board where he thought we erred. He always had source materials to back up his viewpoints, which I respected, and he particularly enjoyed inundating Commissioner Doherty in the John Birch Foundation materials, so they would have lengthy discussions over the merits of the John Birch Society after the meetings. For those who don't know, Dick was a mailman for most of his career, and he had particular fondness for Commissioner Doherty's father because he would deliver mail to Mr. Doherty's law firm. And apparently the rumor has it that Dick would spend most of his lunch break arguing politics with Mr. Doherty. So
That's very believable.
in later years, I think the full board enjoyed Mr. Dick's attendance, enjoyed his comments, and again, I'll always say, he was nothing but a gentleman. He would let you know when he disagreed, but he always did it in a very innocent, for those of you that sat through the meetings when Mr. French would make, and he didn't comment every week, unlike Ken, but yeah, he would be very respectful and would have his points, and then he would always have, like, again, he's always putting a magazine. So today, his daughter, one last time, gave us one of the pieces of reading material for the board. And that was Dick's signature. He always had 3 of them, always gave them to us. And right, wrong, or indifferent, agree, disagree, or not pay much attention. Appreciated that. It wasn't just somebody coming and just talking off the cuff. He was well prepared. And again, it might be 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks in between comments. So Dick will be missed. I wish you and your family all the best. Dick was a World War II veteran. He never talked about his heroism. Always downplayed that aspect of his life. He was a committed family man and a committed patriot. So for me personally, I will really miss Dick, and I think this is one case where I think I can speak on behalf of board members that were here, Steve Thurner and Mike Doherty. I think we really missed and enjoyed the conversations we had. On another point, just a couple of things that I forgot. We delayed the discussion or decision on the public defender's contract, and a couple of things I forgot and didn't get a chance to ask before we broke. So I'd just like to say that before we bring this back up, I'd like to see I think the board should see the contracts, the bids. It's really difficult to ask us. We were arguing about apples to apples or oranges to oranges yesterday, but without seeing the actual bids. So I'd just like to put on the record a request before we bring it back that we see the actual bids. And then one other thing that I should put on the record, that ultimately I'm not qualified to make such a momentous decision, and I think it would be really wise to set up a committee, a screening committee of a retired judge, a retired prosecutor, and a retired public defender, screen the contracts, and have them make a recommendation back to the board. None of us have practiced law. None of us have practiced in the courtroom, and most of us wouldn't know. So I think if we were to go down that road, it would eliminate the consternation, and I think both competing bids could then move forward, having been peer reviewed. And I think peer review is something that's so important in today's world. Scientists are asked to be peer reviewed. So a retired judge, a retired prosecutor, and a retired public defender. And it wouldn't necessarily have to be out of Clallam County. In fact, it might be stronger if they came from other jurisdictions, so that then the full issue could be vetted. So those are my 2 thoughts that I wanted to put on the record now, because I think people are still discussing this issue. And what it would mean is, I think we went down that road. Obviously, we need an extension, but at the very least, the contract should be seen and read by the Board of Commissioners, the bids, so that we can discuss. And in a perfect world, we'd set up this committee to help us make such a big decision. And then ultimately, we need to find out if anybody else is going to be a bid for just Superior Court. And I know they've asked the judges for their input, so it'd be interesting to see if they weigh in. So I just wanted to put those on the record. For me, the non-starter is not seeing the bids, though. We have to see those as a board.
Good suggestions, I think. Is that it? Mr. Peach.
I just wanted to share the behavioral health organization agreement that involves Clallam County, Jefferson County, and Kitsap was approved. We had concern about Jefferson County wanting to proceed and agree with us. And I had some conversations with Jefferson County Commissioner, but I've actually got that in writing. Timing on it was excellent. We had the conversation, and all that really does for us is it confirms that in fact they are in agreement, but identifies some issues that we might consider in the future. And I think I sent a copy of this to Brian, just as more of a heads up. We will wait to retain his services until these get vetted at the executive committee level, and then we'll turn to legal services. But just in terms of timing, it timed out fairly well. Our decision to proceed with the agreement, turns out that Jefferson County already made the decision it was a good approach and identified some other issues. And I do thank you very much. When we talked about this, Mike, you offered compliments to me for putting hard work into this. And I need today to do the same thing, but to say to Iva, you're the one who made the difference, Iva. Iva kept prodding me. She kept saying, Bill, why? Bill, why? And I didn't have any good answers. And so when I started asking the executive committee the same question and didn't get good answers, that's all I needed. So I thank you very much. You helped quite a bit in this process.
And I'll move my comments from Bill.
Please do.
Hand them off.
Please do.
I would all like to compliment to Bill and echo Bill's compliments to Ida.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ida.
A lot here to agree with. Iva is just but one of the many very, very competent and good department heads who in their own distinctive and unique ways make us better commissioners. And I, for one, really appreciate that. And I will certainly echo, and I, of course, had a much shorter history with Dick French than did Commissioner Mike, but I will remember Dick as a consummate gentleman of the old style. Also to report, attended the Olympic Area Agency on Aging meeting last Thursday in Shelton. Routine business, the next year's budget was adopted. Nothing too remarkable there. The package is on the table for your reading pleasure. And yesterday, of course, attended along with Auditor Shuna, Administrator Jim, Kay Stevens from the Treasurer's Office, the exit conference from the annual financial and compliance audit and the federal single audit by the state auditor yesterday, and we had once again a very clean audit. It was in the language of auditing, it's an unmodified opinion, which, like accounting, to me is counterintuitive, but what that means is they couldn't find anything that was wrong with the way we manage our finances. The financial statement that was put together by Stan's and his team and the auditor's office was well put together. And in particular, there was some extensive and not unusual, but some further extensive auditing of the federal dollars that we get in various and sundry grants that typically involve some problems. And due to the great diligence of the Sheriff's Office, the Health and Human Services Department, and the Road Department, no problems or issues were found there. The only thing to note, which was in a management letter, it's so minor as to not merit any kind of treatment in the audit report itself. The only thing was just a management letter that says we need to tighten up in some respects our cash receipting and two-person accountability and parks and the parks receipts, for the fees, reservation fees and so forth. I did mention to the auditors that we are in the midst of buying some credit card processing equipment that'll make a lot of those problems disappear, because when you can do it online, as many people do these days, there's no cash, actual currency that passes hands, and therefore it's easily tracked from beginning to end of the transaction. So they were very happy to hear that. So kudos, as I said, to all the folks mentioned, but it is the sum total result of many administrative people who kind of labor in the shadows, and their diligence in attending to all the details of procurements, financial reporting and recording, and that happens all throughout county government. So a result such as this can't occur without everybody pitching in and everybody doing a good job. So I want to say how much I appreciate, and I know I speak for my fellow commissioners, the diligence of the county staff in attending to this very boring but very necessary work, so that the public can have confidence that we manage their money well. There was one other letter. There was an allegation of violation of the Open Public Meetings Act last year for Commissioner Chapman and myself. I don't have a signed copy of the letter, but there's a draft letter that I'm in possession of, if I put my hands on it here, that says, after examination by the State Auditor's Office, there was no violation noted of the Open Public Meetings Act in that particular instance. So I wanted to get that on the record as well. I knew it at the time. This just merely confirms it. So no harm, no foul. And that is it for me. Administrator Jim, anything?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to add just a little bit to the audit explanation. I've been through with the state auditor between this is my 10th one here, and I did 10 in the school district. And what really I took note of the conversation we heard yesterday is that this audit team, the leadership and the members said, that this is the 7th straight year that Clallam County has had a clean audit, and that they do 8 other counties. This group of teams did do 8 other counties, and during that same time, not a single county had more than 1 year in a row of clean audit. And so they were expressly given kudos to the people. And in my judgment, having dealt with these things in several different areas of my professional career, I believe, as you mentioned, the finance people in the big departments that do all these documents and maintain all of the proper records. It's my judgment that and they do a great job, but to me, where our clean audit comes from is the work of Kay Stevens in the Treasurer's Office, Stan Creasy in the Auditor's Office, and Debbie Cook in our Budget Office, who supervises and reviews every one of those financial records before they go in and corrects any discrepancies or issues that they find before they get mailed off to the federal government. And that extra step is what I talk to my fellow administrators, because the word's getting around that we have clean audits. And my fellow administrators ask me, how do you guys do this? And that's what I always say, it's that double check that we do with those 3, as I mentioned to the auditors yesterday, mentally ill individuals. Debbie, Kay, and
You say that with
Stan.
the most affectionate.
I do. They have hardline OCD, all 3 of them, and thank God for that, because they are dotting I's and crossing T's and making sure the comma's in the right place, as well as every number being accurate. And to me, that's where the credit really goes.
Very good. Good job.
Yes.
I have to assume Ross and his team have some role in that too.
Well, they do. They're at that next level. They're on the front line actually dealing with it, and they they make sure that the things come back and forth, and then they submit to your Debbie or Kay or Stan, depending on the issue is, for their review before they send it in. But they do a great job, and the commissioner thanked all of them. And so I wanted to add that extra layer, because I really think that's the difference.
And that is not a medical diagnosis. It is a statement of fact.
I say it lovingly.
That attention to detail is what gets you clean audits. And that is absolutely the truth. And we see that from year to year here, so. All right, before we get ourselves in trouble, contracts and agreements.
Thank you. Item 2A is amendment number 2 with Prevention Works, extending the contract through December 31st, 2016, and adding an additional $10,472 in funding, all as was discussed yesterday in work session.
Adoption of the amendment.
Second?
Moved and seconded, discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion
We
carried.
had 9 proposals that the staff determined were compliant. And we also, just to put it on the record, we received 2 proposals that did not meet the requirements of, they sent them to the wrong department, and therefore they didn't come to us in a timely manner to the right place as required in the proposal, so they were disqualified.
So you said they were sent to another department.
Yes, they were supposed to come to the commissioner's office, by 4:30 on December 3rd. And the staff sent us an email saying that these 2 got delivered to their office, and nobody was there to take it and stamp it in, and didn't come to ours. So they determined they weren't then eligible to be considered. And both of them were from the same firm, Reflection Counseling Services. So I presume they got legal advice on that, but should disclose that.
Make a motion to refer the proposals to the health department for their review and recommendation back to the board.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3B is a request for qualifications for architecture, engineering, consultant services to be received no later than 4:30 p.m. Friday, January 8th in the Parks, Fair, and Facilities Department, as was discussed yesterday in work session.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I think we can get through administration before the time for the hearings.
Item 4A is a resolution correcting terms for the members of the Marine Resources Committee, namely Arnold Schoutman is reappointed to serve as Development Community Representative for a 4-year term ending December 31st, 2019. Carolyn Lynn Munch is reappointed to serve as District 2 Representative for a 4-year term ending December 31st, 2019. And Robert Vreeland is reappointed to serve as Conservation Environmental Representative for a 4-year term ending December 31st, 2019.
Adoption of the resolution.
Second?
Moved and seconded, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And item 4B is a resolution appointing a member to the Planning Commission, namely Steve Gale is appointed as District 1B Representative to fill an unexpired term ending December 31st, 2017.
Adoption of the resolution.
Second?
Moved and seconded, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll pause here.
Presently zoned rural low to Parks and Recreation. We should have a visual blue screen for you. Can you see it? On October 7th, the Planning Commission reviewed the rezone request. Staff presented a report covering the 6 criteria or required showing for amendment, of which the Planning Commission found to be compliant with both the comprehensive plan and development regulations. The Planning Commission took public testimony from one nearby landowner, after which the staff and applicant attempted to address those concerns. The rezone request passed 6-1 with 2 abstentions, and the Planning Commission forwarded a positive recommendation. The subject property is located east of Swim off the Old Lynn Highway. It's accessed from Thompson Road, which is a county road. Currently, the land is undeveloped in zone rural low along with the surrounding properties. The purpose of the Parks and Recreation Zone is to govern land uses for properties managed by Clallam County for park and recreation purposes consistent with the Clallam County Park and Recreation Master Plan. If approved, this proposed rezone will allow the Department of Parks, Fair and Facilities to construct an 18-hole disc golf course on the northern 20 acres, and the southern 20 acres will remain as is. A little background on the subject properties. The 40 acres originally belonged to the Clallam County Roads Department. In 2004, it was used as a materials depository for debris generated by an estuary restoration project on Jimmy Creek. In April of 2013, the northern 20 acres was transferred to the Parks Department, and the southern 20 acres was transferred this past September. And staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Okay. And I forgot to ask if you wouldn't mind to state your name for the record, just so that we have that on the.
Adele Krustek,
Yeah, thank you.
Bonner, Tanner.
Absolutely. All right, questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll open the hearing. Is there anyone that has signed up to provide comments or testimony?
Joel,
None? Okay. Anybody that has not signed up that would like to provide comments or testimony? Seeing nobody lunge for the microphones, the pleasure of the board to close the hearing.
move to close the public hearing.
Second?
Moved and seconded, discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And the pleasure of the board regarding the ordinance.
Move to adopt the ordinance.
Second?
And for the record, the ordinance is as yet unnumbered, entitled Ordinance Amending Title 31 Comprehensive Plan Map and Title 33 Zoning Map of the Clallam County Code in parents application REZ 2015-01. Further discussion?
For those who have followed this issue, gosh, 20 years ago now, there was a disc golf course proposed in Clallam County starting at Robin Hill Farm, 10 years. Has it really been 10 years?
Been that long?
John, has it been that long?
It's been that long.
Wow.
Wow.
So, appreciate staff, and over the years, it turned out that Robin Hill just wasn't going to work for a disc golf course for a lot of reasons, and primarily just the community in that area had other plans and other uses, and so the board over the years tasked the Parks Board and Joel with finding a suitable location. I actually think this location is probably even a little better because it's a little further east, which can draw in folks from Jefferson and Dig Harbor County or Kitsap counties in the Dig Harbor area. And it was land that the county wasn't really using as much anymore. And so I appreciate staff. Who would have thought, 10 years can go by. But no one ever says the government doesn't finally get there. We get it right. It takes us a while. It's good. But what's different is that whereas before this room was packed with people opposing it, this golf course at a couple of sites we looked at, we had nobody testify today, so that does show that staff did a good job of responding to the citizens' requests. I think this will be a good addition to our Parks Department, our Parks facilities, and I think that it can be a course that we can do for the future. And obviously, we put a little bit of money toward it, but there's a lot of volunteer labor that will go with it. The course at Lincoln Park here in Port Angeles just continues to get used more and more. So this will be a nice second course, and I really appreciate Joel shepherding this through over a 10-year period to get to this point. So
Thank you. I want to acknowledge Bruce's contribution to
thanks to the board for supporting moving this forward. Thanks to the community. Thanks to John Bennett, who's in the back. He's a long time advocate for Robin Hill Farm And in his advocacy, I think he brought a lot of information forward, and I appreciate your leadership on that, John. And I appreciate your support for this site.
Absolutely. Everything you said, Commissioner Chapman, I wholeheartedly support. And Mr. Whitmore and the Parks Department have been very patient, persistent in their pursuit of this. And I think this will work very well.
John's a classic case of he and a couple friends initially telling government, hey, you don't do this, but then becoming part of the process and part of the solution, not just an advocate from the outside. I think John's leadership among his community group was one of the prime examples that I've ever watched of the community really pulling in the same direction, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and from all walks of life. And it was actually a couple of community meetings that I attended 10 years ago. Initially started off, well, if it had tomatoes, I would wear a lot of red, I think. But turns out that many of them became pretty strong advocates on a number of other issues that we here at the county. Specifically, John took a community group and pulled in the right direction and did what he was supposed to do and helped us get to this point today. So forever be grateful to you, John, for your leadership. So thank you. We haven't solved the other issue yet, but someday hopefully we can figure it out too.
Stay in office long enough and you get to be tomato proof. One other observation, this is yet another star in that recreation constellation surrounding Sekiu Bay, between the city, the Jamestown's Clallam tribe, the mountain biking opportunities and hiking and recreation opportunities in the Forest Service lands and DNR lands, private lands and that kind of thing, as well as Sekiu Bay itself with the port's marina located there. So it's another little piece of the puzzle that creates a kind of a well-rounded soup to nuts venue for people to spend some time here in the county and recreate, do all sorts of other things that I know nothing of. And so this is a good thing. So just another little observation from the east end of the county, and I had my appreciation for Commissioner Mike's comments as well. So we didn't vote, so all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Budget.
Thank you. Item 5A is a resolution adopting the following budget revision under risk management, purchase of a new lateral file in the amount of $8,000. The transfer is from contracted training that they're not going to do as much into furnishings.
Move adoption.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 5B is resolution adopting the following supplemental appropriations under non-departmental emergency communication tax. Revenue surpassed estimated budget. This is an $80,000 amount that comes out of the ending fund balance and is paid to PennCom by our contract. And under Public Works, Solid Waste, increased revenue and matching expense for a grant award in the amount of $9,840. And under Health and Human Services, a contract amending, adding funding in the amount of $3,000. Those are the supplemental appropriations for December.
Move adoption of the resolution.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And item 5C, and Commissioner, I misspoke
Yeah,
earlier.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, I did.
We've seen it.
We didn't have to do a hearing, we just announced that we would be doing it today. So these are the steps 1 and 2 under budget reductions. Public Works, Carlsborg Sewer Project, reducing the salary-related expenses not used for Carlsborg Sewer Project and equipment rental and revolving funds, allocating staff to other projects in the roads, solid waste, Clallam Bay Sekiu funds in the total amount of $139,670. That's step 1 of 5. And then under equipment rental and revolving, reducing salary-related expenses not used for Carlsborg Sewer Project and ER&R funds, allocating staff to other projects in the roads, solid waste, Clallam Bay Sekiu Sewer funds in the amount of $64,215. Item 2 of 5, those two total up to 3, 4, and 5 of 5 added up to increased expenditures.
So move adoption of the resolution.
Second?
Moved in second, in discussion.
So just a request, Bob, I hope we can get an update on where we are with Carlsborg Sewer in January. And the timeline for how you see 2016 unfolding has been, it's been a while since we've had an update. Commissioner Rosias coming on board representing that district. It seems very apropos to lay out what your estimate is for the timeline in 2016. What we've accomplished, thus far where we're at.
Okay, good.
So,
Type that.
yeah, so if you think about in that second week of January, whenever it fits in, and so we can have, just bring the board up to speed with community. If we can see a timeline for how 2016 would unfold, that would be great. How you see it unfolding.
We just updated one last week, which I think you have to forward to, but
You could, and then also have the packet when we have the update. And then your timelines thus far are perfect, but hopefully as you get closer to the end, it gets a little better.
And Bob, to add on quickly to that, if you wouldn't mind, when you email that to us, if you would email it to Troy Jarman, the chair of the Community Advisory Committee, inevitably she will ask, and I will say, I'll get Bob to email it to you, so I'll take care of that.
And I think all of our correspondence now going to Commissioner-elect Rosias.
Yes, everything that is in any way, shape, or form administrative, executive, the legislative has not been. It's been rare.
Probably should just, anything that's coming to the full board, should be going to him as well.
Well, we have some that's attorney-client privilege under the legislative.
That's different.
That's the only thing that hasn't been going.
But let's print those
I've been
out.
filling up his email.
I hope that if they haven't been resolved, Mark, you guys are pretty well on Mark. And
I am keeping track, so that
Bringing into the
when he swears his oath, I can give him this. There's only been 2 of them.
Your homework assignment, which is typical for new commissioner. Commissioner-elect Rosias and I will meet Friday for some adult beverages, and I'll catch him up on some history and that kind of thing. So I think that'll be good. Okay, where were 5D here?
No, I don't think you voted on it.
Oh, we haven't voted?
I think
Okay.
we're just still discussions.
Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, 5D is resolution adopting the 2016 Clallam County budget.
adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Moved in second, discussion.
So for me, this is just, obviously we have to have a budget. I don't intend to live under this budget. I don't intend to spend as much of the reserves. I think it's my message to Bill and Commissioner-elect Rosias is that I think in January we roll up our sleeves, make some changes so we don't use all $3 million of reserves, and I don't think that that's anybody's intention. So it's a start. Obviously we have to have a budget. It is a balanced budget by using reserves, but I would prefer not to use that much in reserves for 1 year. And I think that there are some strategies that we need to discuss to get that number down, much like Ken mentioned earlier. A lot of it will be revenue, and where revenue comes in, and what sources of revenue, and whether we discuss reinstating the 210 sales taxes. This has been discussed, and I expect that will be a discussion point early in the year. Any positions that still haven't been filled, we should probably just look at those one more time. And then as we go through the year, one of the strategies that I'd like to see is that every position that may come open, that position traditionally, the administrator has just made the call. I think those positions should come back to the board as a strategy to manage the budget going forward and look at each position that comes open and have the board take a look at whether that should be reinstated or not. It's an automatic or not there. So that would be something. We used to do that. We've not done it as much in recent years. We probably should get back to that. And then ultimately we'll continue to monitor what the state does, how the economy performs. And I think that we should have quarterly updates on freestanding and the treasurer's office, and to get quarterly updates to the board on revenue. Because the budget uses so much in reserves on paper, and if tradition has held, we have underestimated revenue and overestimated I'd like to see more of a quarterly update. I'd like to get Stan and the treasurer, whether it's the treasurer herself or Kay, like, and maybe even monthly. Kay puts out those revenue projections monthly, but maybe we put those on the agenda monthly so that we can closely track revenue, so we know exactly where we're at, and make adjustments, so we don't have to use all $3 million. But we don't want to cut services either. So those are some of my thoughts. So today's the first step. As is always, a lot will depend on revenue, expenditures, and where the direction of the board is in the new year.
I appreciate being able to monitor very carefully where we're going with regard to the revenues. And the part that I'm especially interested in, if you take a look at the $3 million, there's about $1.3 million that's associated with ongoing future requirements. That to me, it's to do with employees, bringing everybody to 40 hours in the positions. That to me is really, really important. And so I'm quite interested in making sure we're on track to deliver that. And personally, I do think that we've got some room in the budget because of the way it's organized. But I agree, we should be watching it like a hawk and take corrective action if it's necessary.
No further comment from me. Said all I can say probably. So call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And 5E.
5E is a resolution adopting the 2016 Clallam County Budget Emergency Appropriations. And this is being extra careful under Clallam County Charter Section 9.70 appropriations. There is language that in 2012 was considered to make it possible that we should do an emergency appropriation anytime any fund uses beginning fund balance in the next year's budget. So that being the case, and in keeping with what we've been doing since 2012, here are, Debbie just updated this, here are the fund, all of the funds, including the general fund reserves at the end, where some portion of fund balance is being used, more than the total revenues coming in to cover expenditures.
Okay.
Based on the draft, on the adopted budget,
Yes.
it may not be based on reality.
That's correct.
Approve adoption of the appropriation, resolution adopting the 2016 emergency appropriation.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion. And to me, this is just kind of a ministerial act here due to the language in the county charter. This is a kind of a belt and suspenders thing to make sure that there's sufficient legal authority to execute the budget as the budget was adopted here a moment ago. So, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And here we are, community development.
Item 6A is a resolution authorizing action on current use assessment applications.
Move adoption of the resolution. Okay. I don't know if ECD had you guys want to give a report?
If you'd like a report, I can give a report.
Sure. So I'll withdraw my motion.
Good morning. My name is Susan Lindstedt. I'm a senior GIS technician with Clallam County Assessor's Office. On November 18th, public hearing was held before the Planning Commission. They voted 5-0 to recommend adoption of staff recommendations to approve 3 current use applications. The cumulative effect of these applications is a negative tax shift of a little over $2,000 per year. It means that the landowners in question will be picking up more of their own tax bill.
So it's a tax unshift.
Unshift, yeah.
Okay. Questions from the board? Pleasure of the board regarding the resolution.
Now I'll make a resolution authorizing action on the current use assessments.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Public Works.
Item 7A is resolution establishing government equipment rental schedule for 2016, all as was discussed yesterday in work session, as well as one of the open public budget meetings where we incorporated the total amounts into the budget.
Move adoption of the resolution.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And item 7B is the release of dike easement, all as was discussed yesterday in work session. This is the additional legal step necessary to comply with the board's decision a couple of weeks ago after the hearing on releasing any interest the county has in this property, i.e. the easement that was granted in 1950 and never been used.
Move adoption of the release of the dike easement.
Second, we have a question.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
This is just a quick one, isn't it? It releases.
It is the functional equivalent of a quit claim.
Okay.
Yes, quit claim is when we have fee interest. This is an easement, which is not fee interest, it's just an easement. So this is the best way that the Public Works folks and the attorneys figured out how to memorialize the fact that we relinquish our interest in said easement.
Okay.
Did I say that correctly? Okay. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And there's no other agenda items except for the final public comment period on anything. So anybody that has any comments about anything in general? Yes, sir. Morning, Pete.
Morning. Pete Peterson, Juvenile Services. Just a quick comment. I knew Dick French fairly well for the past 25 years also. He was a wonderful guy. How I came to know Dick, and I wanted the board to know this because it is a small community. Our neighbors when we moved to Port Angeles behind us were Richard French and Don French, his son and daughter-in-law, and so his kids grew up behind us. Reflective family of just how great Dick was. Same with the family. It was a wonderful family. Richard did move to Ellensburg several years ago, and I think he's an engineer for the city of Ellensburg, but always appreciated his insight. We didn't always agree in our discussions, but one thing about Dick I wanted the board to know too, whenever I came to a meeting, he was the first one to say hello, ask me how the family was doing, I'd ask him how his family was doing. He still has family here in the community as far as I know, some of his grandkids, so just a great guy and an asset to the community. He will be missed.
So, thank you. Oh,
Good morning.
good morning.
Lois Turner, I'm still on Mount Angels Road. I wanted to make some comments following up from my observations at your work session yesterday. I endorse Commissioner Chapman's proposal that you take these two proposals you have and put them to a committee because it basically follows county standard process. I've been here when you've opened the bids for a road project. We immediately send it to the road department for their review, and then they come back and recommend. And so I think that concept is one consistent with how you handle other bids. I was a little shocked to hear that you hadn't seen the bids. I'm not sure how you had that conversation yesterday if you hadn't seen what was offered in the bid, so I'm a little surprised at that. I'm here today because I've developed a very strong personal invested view in the need for good, solid defense. Because out of my 3 years of a personal, extremely difficult process, my husband and I were forced to interact with the legal system. And unless you've been there, I'll tell you, your gut doesn't understand how difficult it is. But what I learned out of that is, number one, when we wanted to find an attorney Our principal had two criteria. One is experience. Who knows the most? So we called around. We were very fortunate we found an attorney who had an enormous wealth of experience. Secondly, I want an attorney who was willing to challenge the system. The attorney we found, fortunately, had a history of challenging Clallam County's prosecutor. That, for me, was a plus. So yesterday, I was a little surprised. I didn't understand. There was some reference to, quote, an impaired relationship between the district court and the public defender. And so I trust that that's not seen as a negative. Because if you look at the whole legal system, it's based on the issue of contention. We wouldn't have to be here. We wouldn't have had to go on the week if there wasn't contention. So contention is built into the system. And in fact, I would recommend for your reading a book called Just Mercies. It's an autobiography of a brilliant young man out of Harvard who took upon the legal system in Alabama and other areas. And basically it shows clearly from real life examples when you have a close personal relationship between the judge and the prosecutor and the defense, the person who loses is the client. The other person that loses is the system, because you end up with poor outcomes that are later on are challenged. So I would hope that you would not see a contention as a negative, but rather as a consistent reality of how the system works. So there are two proposals in front of you. After you've reviewed them, what I hope is that before you move forward, that you might consider having a public interview of those two proposals. And the reason I'm asking for that is because, quite frankly, most of the citizens, many of our citizens may have to intersect with that system. With our median income at only $30,000 or $40,000, I will tell you from my own personal view, those folks can't afford a public attorney. Even though we were professionals, had a substantial income, we made it through our 3-year battle only because the community stepped forward and did fundraising for us. Being engaged in the legal system is an incredibly expensive proposal, both monetarily and emotionally. So I conclude by saying I hope that you amend the comment I heard yesterday, and that is maybe we need new blood. And I hope you'd amend that rather than saying we need new blood, and say we need a system that is the best we can get. And that our local citizens will have the best defense they have because they deserve no less. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Bill Wilson, P.O. Box 817, Port Angeles. I too am very concerned with the status of the indigent defense. I think most of the board is aware of a lawsuit filed a couple of years ago, Wilbur v. Mount Vernon, where the federal judge found that the city of Mount Vernon and another city were systemically denying people proper indigent defense. And the city of Mount Vernon is now paying several $1 million. I apologize. Is now paying several $1 million for that, losing that lawsuit. You're faced with a situation where you have a 30-year unblemished record of indigent defense in the county, and from a pedestrian's point of view, it looks like the only thing that is to be gained by your consideration of a newcomer, the new blood you're talking about. It's politics. It's pure and simple politics. There has been no lawsuits filed against the county for lack of proper indigent defense. There's been no reasons except that the judge upstairs has a fit of pique against the current public defender, and that's exactly the way it's supposed to be. And now the question you need to ask yourselves, does that courtroom up there belong to a person or does it belong to the people? And because he comes down here and sits in the audience to glare at you while you make your decisions should not influence you. In fact, I think that's unethical for a judge to be down here trying to influence legislation that's coming from the bench. And I haven't seen him down here for many other proposals, so I can only assume that that is the main thing that he was concerned about, was how you vote on this new Indigent Defense Council. And I like Will Payne very much. And if I needed an attorney, I probably would hire somebody like Will Payne. But the point I'm making is to you, is that we have 30 years of unblemished indigent representation. Why would you mess with that? If you, Mr. Pete, you said yesterday you wanted some new blood. If you had a brain aneurysm, would you want a new, fresh out of medical school surgeon to address that, or would you want somebody that's been doing that for 30 years? And you've got to think about the indigent defendants that come before the council. They too would like a 30-year experience and not just new blood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, we're at the end of our agenda. There will be a holiday breakfast Thursday that more than one commissioner likely will attend, and as well that Thursday there will be our monthly media availability on KONP at 1 p.m. And that is it for the business to come before us this day, so we will adjourn our meeting. Thanks.